Hi, this is Red Ibis Coach. I'm Heather, and today I'm going to talk about powerlifting and my observations of it, and how I think there is a clear pipeline from powerlifting to bodybuilding for women, and some of the reasons why, and then some thoughts that I have in conclusion. So I started powerlifting in 2014 and I have consistently been lifting ever since. If you don't know what powerlifting is, it's a specific type of lifting using compound lifts, so and a barbell. So it's squat, deadlift, and bench press. Those are the three main lifts. And so I did those, and I also included overhead press. And then eventually I started to include some Olympic weightlifting adjacent things like cleans and clean and press or power press. And then, of course, like some supplementary type movements like dumbbell curls and some like accessory work. So I've been doing that since 2014. I never had a coach. I've never competed. I just like doing it. And once I learned how to do it correctly with good form, I've just continued to do it. And something that has always been annoying for me about lifting is that people always want to tell me, because that's what people do to women for some reason. They want to tell me what I should or shouldn't be doing and what kind of program I should or shouldn't be following and stuff like that. But I always knew instinctively, since I started lifting, that if I followed some program or if I tried to lift the way competitors lift, that I would eventually get injured and I would stop lifting. And I was actually afraid of that. I've been afraid of something stopping me from lifting. And injury is clearly a way that would get in the way of that. And when I was in grad school in Ireland, I also kind of slowed down and would do a little bit of some different lifts. It was kind of like a break because I just had to focus so much on my studies. So instead of really focusing on the three main lifts, I was still doing a lot of lifting, but different kinds of lifting. So kettlebell stuff, Smith machine stuff, just to mix it up and make it a little less taxing, and something that I didn't have to put a lot of thought into. And when I did that, I did lose a little bit of power and a little bit of strength, I guess you could say. And I've been building that slowly back up. And it doesn't really worry me because I know that I can always go harder if I want to and build the strength back up more. But also, again, the goal has never been competition for me. The goal is to lift. Can I lift? How? And just like that's it. That's always been the case. So like the max that I've ever deadlifted, for example, is 315 pounds. And that felt like a good peak for me. I don't feel like I need to continue to just gain and gain and gain and gain and gain. I don't want to lose my strength though. Like that is something that continues to weigh on my mind a little bit. When I started lifting, I didn't know any other women who were lifting, not even one. And it wasn't until I got back to the US in 2016 that I stumbled across a whole world of powerlifting women on Instagram and discovered that, people are lifting at this elite level, and there are all kinds of like records, national and world records that have been broken by women over the years. And it's a thing, an established thing. What is also something that really stood out to me when it comes to Instagram lifters was the aesthetic, like showing how lifting and being strong has changed your body composition and proving how strong you are by how you look. So dieting down a little bit so that more muscle is visible, and like posing in a way that like shows your musculature, but also sexualization, really, like objectification of strong women and strong being sexy and big asses and all of that, that goes along with every pipeline of objectification that happens on the internet when it comes to women's bodies. And there are some uh, physical therapists and like strength mechanics people that I try to follow and enjoy following because I get a lot out of their suggestions and their tips and their advice for movement mechanics. I find the objectification of women's bodies and the way people talk about them to be really fucking irritating and just constant. It's just constant. So if you are one of the people, or if you know of this space on Instagram in particular, I don't know about TikTok. I've never used TikTok. I don't use Instagram anymore, but during the Instagram era that I had, I noticed that it was really important to continue to engage people with the physicality of the body for women. Like it couldn't just be about, I'm strong. Look how strong I am. Look how much I'm lifting. Here's what I've learned about lifting. Here's how you can lift better. That is not the primary purpose of Instagram, is it? The primary purpose of Instagram is having something to look at. So you become the thing to look at. No matter what sport you're playing, what it comes down to is, are you good to look at? Do I want to look at you again? If you're someone who is not prepared, which honestly, because this whole phenomenon of so many women lifting is pretty new, if you're not prepared for the way your body will change based on the type of lifting that you're doing, you're also not going to be prepared for the type of attention that you're getting based on the way your body has changed because of the lifting that you're doing. So if you were a generally thin or skinny person, and now your body is more muscular, and you don't necessarily have like a lot of softness naturally, right? Like your body is not naturally super curvy. People have comments about that. People have things to say. Some people will ask if you're a man or if you're trans or something like that. But also um there's just like always comments. So no matter how good you are at lifting, no matter how much you've lifted, I've noticed there are two things that happen if you're a woman on the internet who's showing this progression in your life over the years. One is the objectification. There's usually like some part of your body that they continue to focus on and comment on, and you're just a sexual object to them. And two, the constant comments and critiques of your lifting form, how much you're lifting, how you came to lift as much as you do, whether or not you're using some kind of enhancement, some kind of chemical enhancement to make it so that you can lift more, whether or not you're taking testosterone even, and if and all of those things are none of their fucking business, right? But that's something that happens when you're a woman on the internet and you're doing something, particularly if you're doing something that like the average person, particularly the average man, is not doing as well as you. They have things to say. So they either sexualize you or criticize you. And the people who are just following you because they're interested in you and are happy for you and are just observing your progress and your growth as an athlete are few and far between. And then there's the lifting influencers. There's the people who've made it their business. It becomes a business. Their physicality and their lifting ability becomes a currency in their business. And so not only are they doing it because they want to, but also because it's a business model now. They have to do it to maintain their business. And it's also like you have to be strong to prove to prove your business model. You can't really stop doing that. And of course, what happens with most competitive lifters at some point, one, because I think that women are new to this sport and to a certain extent. So they're encouraged to lift like men. And the people who understand women's body mechanics and how there are several ways that lifting should be adjusted for women's body mechanics, including for hormonal fluctuations, are few and far between. And two, because of your self-image, like now you're the lifter, you're the strong, sexy woman, you have to continue to maintain that. I think it really starts to be internalized and you end up getting injured eventually. So once people get injured, they have to either scale way back and possibly lose some of their strength and some of the progress that they've made, some of their gains, so to speak, or they pivot to something else like bodybuilding so that they continue their strength. These things are fine to do, no problem. However, I do think that because women are not used to, again, the changes that happen to the body when you're lifting like a man for a long period of time, and you don't know how a movement over time will shape your body. You can have some idea of what you'll end up looking like over time, but you cannot know for sure. And also, when you gain muscle, you gain fat. This process in your body, the two are not separate. You can't lose fat and gain muscle at the same time. Okay, so if you're gaining muscle, you're gaining fat. If you're losing muscle, if you're losing fat, you're losing muscle. Like these things go hand in hand and can be carefully calibrated to a certain extent with diet, but they cannot be completely separated from each other. So this creates all kinds of body dysmorphia opportunities. This creates all kinds of conflicts, this internal and external conflicts about how you see yourself, how you feel about the way your body has changed, because you cannot fully control it, especially if the sport is calibrating for strength, not for aesthetics. And things change over time. Your body changes over time. The way you look changes over time. If you're not ready, if you used to be one way and you were used to being that way and looking that way, and suddenly your body is a completely different body, that impacts your self-esteem, your self-image. And even if you're happy about the way your body has changed, it can still be overwhelming sometimes, especially because I can tell you from personal experience, clothes are not fucking made for us. If you're a power lifter, if you have a lot of muscle, clothes aren't made for you. You can end up feeling a lot of gender dysphoria just trying clothes on. And this is already a problem for women who don't have a body that fits into clothes nicely, like your proportions are not uniform, so your clothes never fit right and you're constantly trying to find clothes you like anyway. that's already a problem for many women. So you compound that with different parts of the body with that are in different dimensions that clothes were never made for muscular women. And so then, like, are you only able to wear stretchy, spandexy, tight things, or like things that um, don't like squeeze in the wrong places and aren't tight, and like that sort of thing also becomes a mind fuck. So then you're like, what have I done? What? I'm a monstrosity. I don't belong anywhere. People don't know how to read me. People tell me like, you look like you could beat me up, or like, I love a muscle mommy, step on me. Those things, they all kind of exploded in the past 5 to 10 years. I don't think a lot of us were ready for it. I'm not in the public eye in that way. I've never made my social media presence about how I look or like my athleticism specifically. It's a particular kind of mindfuck for any athletic woman, any female athlete of any type, especially if you transferred from one sport to another. Like if you used to be a gymnast, I used to follow a female weightlifter who was a gymnast, and then she became a weightlifter, and now, surprise, she's a bodybuilder. Or another sport, because those sports often value a smaller body. And there are even, sports coaches, elite sports coaches who coach women to this fucking day in 2026 who think that if women train to a level of losing their menstrual cycle and no longer having their period, then they've peaked. So there's a lot of misogyny and a lot of ignoring women's biology in order to fit them into a male model of how to be an athlete. There's so much of that hasn't been properly addressed or unpacked or like really dismantled for the fallacies that they are. But women still have to exist in the world whether they're ready to like show the way their body looks or not. And even if they started out being fine with it, like once they get to a certain level of following, I think it does seem to like weigh on them and affect their self-image. And even if they aren't in the public eye, I think it still is a very fine line. It like if you think about dating, if you think about the way like men already have so many preferences and like flippant things that they say about women's bodies constantly. So, like, if you're a hetero woman trying to date men and you have a muscular body, what a fucking mindfuck. And then, if you're a muscular woman who dates anyone who isn't a man, so for example, if you're a lesbian, okay, well, it makes sense that, this like muscled up woman likes other women. So, or like you're a butch, so it makes sense. Like there's so many appraisals of your body and assuming that you are a certain way because of the way you look. And I've experienced it to like a more minor extent myself, like with people saying, with women and men saying like step on me mommy, muscle mommy, beefy lady, like just weird shit. Nobody, like I didn't consent to any of that. I didn't even say like this is how I want to be talked to. People will just fucking do it anyway. Again, like with the whole identity thing that I talked about concerning race, this happens a lot with female athletes and their bodies. They don't have any control over the narrative that people have over their bodies. And it can be very it can be very like there's so much cognitive dissonance because you're like, I chose to do this. I chose to participate in this sport. I chose to do something that I knew would change my body in ways that I wasn't totally in control of. What am I supposed to do with that? And I've had people say to me, well, like, you should train in this way or that way so that your aesthetics, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this has never been the point. Like, the aesthetics aren't the point. It's very hard for people to understand. People who don't fucking consistently work out and don't care about something, you do it because you love it, not because it makes you look a certain way. These are two separate things. They're not the same. If you love a sport, you're not doing it so you fucking look any kind of way. You're doing it because you love the thing. So, in a way, like those kinds of comments are so useless. They're so like they're trivializing the complexity. It is not a trivial thing. So why do women in powerlifting suddenly end up in bodybuilding? Well, one, as I kind of alluded to before, they get injured, so they pivot to something else. But also, I think bodybuilding is the ultimate optimal way to completely customize your body. Like, yes, your genetics will play a certain part in like how you end up looking, like where you end up building muscle. So like I obviously have like genetics where my shoulder muscles are just really easy to build. Maybe not my back muscles, but like here, my traps and my lats, they build really easily, which, you know, is terrible if you want to buy a form-fitting coat, but that's besides the point. So anyway, bodybuilding allows women to customize their bodies in some way while still lifting and still maintaining their athleticism. But in addition to that, they're dieting down and having this supreme control over how big or small they are. And I think after a certain point, because female powerlifters can have a crisis of femininity, like how can I look like this and be feminine? How can I be soft and be treated as soft when men just see me as like this freak, this genetic mistake, because I've chosen to do things with my body that changed it in a way that makes it look less recognizable as feminine. I think there is a really understandable reason why female powerlifters end up gravitating to bodybuilding. However, I have noticed both in powerlifting and bodybuilding, and I can't really speak to other sports to the extent that I can speak to these, although I'm sure there are lots of fucking assumptions that can be made based on the weird shit that people say about women's bodies anyway. I have noticed that in lifting sports, people are still weird about eating. There's still a lot of weird shit, a lot of eating disordered behavior, conversations, a lot of normalized um, body harm, like self-harm when it comes to eating and dieting and what you're putting into your body and what supplementation you're doing. I've noticed that it's already weird and fucked up in powerlifting, and then in bodybuilding you just have permission to go completely all in on the eating disordered behaviors, the body dysmorphic chatter, like both internally in your brain and externally with the people that are still around, because when this becomes your whole life, it's really hard to maintain a lot of social connections. Because if you're a bodybuilder who's dieting and you get pissed because someone says something about your salad, you're not going to keep a lot of friends. You're going to have other friends who are fine with the eating disordered behaviors and can tolerate you obsessing about food and calories and macros all day, every day, and then damn near collapsing from dehydration and adrenaline after your show, after you compete. Not a lot of people are going to be on board with that. Like, it's just too much because it becomes your whole personality, and you clearly are like tipping over into really unhealthy, toxic behaviors. I don't hold any woman who has decided to do bodybuilding, I don't hold it against them. However, it is, for me, I cannot ignore how toxic and disordered that sport is. What's really interesting and what kind of changed my relationship with powerlifting, and I'll try to find the paper. There's this paper that did a study on men, but people treat women's physiology and biology as if it's a small version of men. Shout out to Dr. Stacy Sims, because she talks about that a lot. Like, that's her whole body of research, really, and her whole career is kind of combating that, both with research and with the way she trains athletes. But in this paper, it was studying entropy. And entropy is like the breakdown of things in your body, the breakdown of cells, which eventually leads to death. That is ultimately what kills us in one way or another, is entropy. And it was studying different athletes and their lifespan. And it found out, it determined that golfers, of all athletes, live the longest out of a bunch of different sports that were focused on in the study. And bodybuilders live the shortest lives because they, and believe it or not, cyclists also had accelerated entropy. Part of this, in my opinion, and I'm obviously not like an exercise physiologist or a medical doctor of any kind, but it just makes sense to me because, like, if you're constantly building and losing and building and losing and dieting down and building it up and dehydrating and like pushing your body to fit a certain mold and getting like a super low percentage of body fat, and possibly, if you're a woman, losing your menstrual cycle. This has to accelerate entropy. I don't see how it couldn't. There must be a similar mechanism going on with cyclists because of the extremely long training that they do, the very grueling training, and then the long races that they have. That makes sense to me as well. So that kind of changed and shifted my mindset about powerlifting, because there was always something in the back of my head as a lifter, which is like, you could be doing more. You could be going to the gym more. But it was, again, it's never been about how I end up looking or how strong I am compared to other people. It's just like, do I like what I'm doing? Do I enjoy it? Do I want to do it again? And it's almost like a week by week basis. Do I like this? Do I want to do more of it? And because my answer has been yes over time, over 12 years, I can safely say that I I am committed. But will I push myself to the extent of competing, possibly being injured, and accelerating my entropy? Fuck no. I have never lifted the way men lift. I've never, although I felt a lot of pressure to, I've never followed like a strict plan over a long period of time. And that's suited me just fine. One other thing I will say as I'm wrapping this video up is that I started, and I'm not going to show pictures, but I started lifting when I was 30. I'm 41 now. I was pretty scrawny looking back. I thought that I was like, I never thought I was chubby or anything like that. Definitely not. But I wasn't like a super consistent exerciser. I would like have phases and then take breaks and have phases and take breaks. And I really wasn't ever exercising to like lose weight, but I only did it if I enjoyed it and I felt like doing it or there was like a purpose to it. So I was pretty scrawny. I didn't have a lot of musculature, particularly like in my upper body. I was pretty weak. And I don't know if perimenopause has anything to do with it, but when I started lifting, my body changed within a few years. I gained a lot of weight. And I wouldn't say that I was necessarily eating any differently than I did before I started lifting. This was like part of the muscle gain was also gaining a little bit of fat. And even if I hadn't gained weight, I still would have had to come to terms with the idea that my body had changed because I was more muscular. For me, and the way lifting has worked on my body over time, because I've never stopped. The longest I've ever stopped lifting was like 6 months. And one of those times, the 6 month period was because of COVID, but I would always do other like lifting adjacent things at home. Like I would still do all the different lifts just with like stuff that I could pick up at home. This is the body that I have because I lift. If I stopped lifting forever, I don't know what would happen to it. I don't know how it would change. I'm 41 now. My hormones are different than they were when I was 30. I had like a period of time where I'm just like, what have I done? Why have I've chosen this thing that's made my body bigger. I don't like how most clothes look on me because lifting has made my body bigger. I don't like the way people appraise my body because of the way it has changed, because people do not have visual literacy when it comes to fitness. First of all, you can't really tell how fit someone is by looking at them, no matter how fat or thin they are. You don't know how much fat would actually put them into the range of being like skinny fat or what they call normal weight obese by looking at them. So stop fucking doing that. You shouldn't be doing that anyway. Like this is 2026, grow the fuck up. But also, um, because people don't have visual literacy, particularly when they're looking at female athletes' bodies, they still think in a binary of like fat or thin, or maybe like fat, thin, manly, or like whatever the stupid fucking porn terms and Reddit subreddit porny terms that they have for assessing women's bodies. Like, you don't need to tell me what they are. I don't care. Um, but that also means that like you don't get to just have a body that is different than other people's bodies in some ways, and then people can still understand that you're committed to a sport, because they'll try to tell you that like, well, I can't see, your abs aren't visible, so you're not a fit athlete, or whatever stupid thing. It doesn't matter. It's all dumb because it's all It's always coming from someone who doesn't work out consistently, first of all. It's always coming from someone who starts and stops a program that someone else made. I'm self-made. I've been doing this my own way this whole time. I haven't been lifting like a man, and I don't intend to lift like a man. I lift like a woman. I lift like a woman who wants to continue to lift. Um, do I have good squat form, good deadlift form, good overhead press form? Yeah, anyone who has like the physical capabilities to do that can have good form. It's got nothing to do with gender. So get out of here about that too. Like, um, this isn't meant to become a video where it's like men who say weird things about women's bodies should shut up, but I mean, you should. And also women who feel the need to still critique women's bodies in 2026. Why? There are so many more important things to worry about. Um, However, I do think that there is kind of a question mark now about what's going to happen with women's lifting in the future because of this weird new aesthetic that's starting to pop up with like very thin bodies being ideal. Obviously, you can't gain muscle of any amount if your body is supposed to be thin. And the more you diet down, the more muscle you lose. Because again, you might remember at some point in this video, I said that if you gain muscle, you gain fat. That goes hand in hand. They happen in tandem. They don't happen independently. So if you lose fat, you're losing muscle too. And the more weight you lose, the more muscle you lose. If you do it over a long period of time, you can curtail how much muscle you're losing. If you do it rapidly, not so much. So what will happen to the athleticism of women if we go back to everyone being thin? I think we're going to lose something really special. I think we're going to lose a lot of potential strong athletes, a lot of really good elite level possibilities from athletes because they might get stuck in the mindset that they need to be thin and that everything else they want to do doesn't matter nearly as much as that. We might see more women end up in bodybuilding, but bodybuilding is about aesthetics, not performance and not lifting. So it's going to be interesting to see. But if you're a powerlifter or another strength athlete who ended up in bodybuilding, you got to do what you got to do, I guess. Take care of yourself and don't stay in it too long. If you pivoted to one sport, you can pivot to another, and it's probably good for your body to do that. Am I going to pivot into another sport? I don't know. I took up hula hooping in 2022, so I do that as well. So in conclusion, we could be a lot nicer to women and we could be more appreciative of what it means to be a woman athlete, a female athlete, and be committed to something in a way that kind of defies the social norms. We can have more respect for their athleticism the way we always do for men. So try that. Okay, see you tomorrow.